But you and Aarti look like you're flying a plane.
Yeah, that's a that's a more convenient way to make sure that everybody is listening, actually being heard. Actually, the weather suddenly turned very foul here. So there's a lot of, you might probably hear a lot of thunder and stuff
Oh,
happening.
wow. Oh, wow.
Started raining, yeah.
Hi, Rema.
Hi, Krishna. How are you?
Good, good, Rema. We have all the other speakers here as well.
Hi, Rema. Good evening, Pratyusha.
Hi, Pratyush.
All good? All safe?
All good. Where are you?
At home? Bombay?
Bombay. Okay.
Arti, do you want us to go off video in the first part? Please guide us if that's what you want and you only want us to come in the panels.
Yeah, we could probably stop video until our panels, but in any case, Alicia and Bhavin will be presenting, spotlighting according to the agenda. So either way is okay, but yes, yeah, we are live on YouTube now, so yeah.
Hi, Pearl.
Hi, how are you? Rima?
All good. Hi, Aarti.
Hi.
Good to be amongst friends.
yes, absolutely lovely, yes.
So we'll go off video, is it, Aarti?
Yeah, for the first part right up until 5:20, 5:25. So yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks.
Hi, Kiran. Welcome.
So we have about 20 attendees on, and I think all our panelists are here. So should we kick this off, or do we want to give it a few more minutes, Aarti?
Hari would be joining in just a minute. We'll give it a minute. Karuna's here. Hi, Karuna.
Hey, Ati. I think we just had the all staff overrun a little bit, so I think Hari should be joining in just a couple of minutes.
All right.
Yeah.
A very good evening to everybody who's joined us here at the virtual event for the report launch and discussions on domestic institutional philanthropy in India, charting a course post-COVID-19. We will officially begin with the webinar shortly, but before that, just sharing some tips. For our guests, so we're able to ensure that the event runs smoothly. This is a Zoom webinar model, and audio and video options are disabled by default. The full interaction with speakers and other invited guests is possible through chat and Q&A, and we encourage our audience to engage with the speakers and panelists through the Q&A option on Zoom. In case you're having any trouble with audio, we request you to disconnect and rejoin. We're also live streaming these discussions on YouTube. On behalf of Sattva Consulting, I welcome one and all who've joined this virtual event on domestic institutional philanthropy in India, charting a course post-COVID-19. The web event will see the official launch of the report. The study has been conducted with the support of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It delves into deep conversations with 74 leaders from 47 domestic foundations in the country and explores evolutions and patterns in strategies, programs, and collaborations in 4 key sectors: agricultural livelihoods, women's empowerment and digital financial inclusion, water and sanitation, and health systems and delivery. We hope that this virtual event is engaging and meaningful to all of you who've chosen to attend from far and wide. To kick off the proceedings of this evening, I now invite Mr. Sri Krishna Sridhar Murthy, co-founder and CEO of Sattva Consulting, to deliver the opening remarks and lay the context for the report and the roundtable discussion. Over to you, Mr. Krishna.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Warm welcome to everybody who's here, and special thanks to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for supporting this initiative. We are obviously living in very strange times, the pandemic around us, which a lot of them are also looking at as an opportunity to now, in many ways, accelerate developmental agenda, and that it's in that context that we are all meeting here today. India, I think, is in a very, very unique place today with the evolution and the emergence of a very, very strong domestic philanthropy ecosystem, which has been further accelerated by a very impactful, unique CSR law over the last few years. And at Sattva, we've been working at the intersection of many different stakeholders, specifically the philanthropic ecosystem and the CSR. And it is amazing to see how the convergence has started to happen and how the strengthening of India's development has started to happen through domestic foundations, innovation, and many, many success stories that have started to emerge. This report was an opportunity for us to go deep into this particular discussion of how these domestic foundations are thinking about their work, the agenda, and the emergence also of slowly the systemic thinking, the systemic change thinking that has started to come, which we believe is very critical in these times for the country. The report, we hope, will give everybody a little bit of an idea and a bit of a deep dive into some foundations of what work they're doing, the kind of innovations, examples of impact, and most importantly, the kind of collaborations and partnerships that these foundations have been able to kind of work on to scale their work. And that for us is really the crux of where we want to go from here, which is really to enable and develop those partnerships among foundations in India, among philanthropies in India, among CSRs in India, and all the other stakeholders working on developmental agenda, so that we are able to achieve the outcomes and the goals that we set for ourselves. I once again welcome all of you and thank everyone for being here. I now invite Mr. Hari Menon for his keynote address. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Krishna. Special thanks to all the Sattva team members and to my fellow panelists. Special mention to Rakesh Ranjanji for making time in your busy schedule to join us for this conversation. So I'm really happy to have an opportunity to speak briefly, just to provide some context for this work and why we as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation are particularly excited about both the report and how we think this might be able to contribute to the ongoing discussion on collaborative philanthropy in India. Just to start and set the context, the Sattva team have done a really good job to undertake a detailed study on the state of domestic institutional philanthropy. And I'm really glad that many organizations participated. These are not easy times, the last several months. And it's been fantastic to have had such widespread participation. And we hope this information and the report that's put out is really going to serve the public good and lead to a lot more joint opportunity for collaboration and growth of philanthropy in India. As the Gates Foundation, we believe that philanthropy has an important role to play in helping solve some of the biggest health and development challenges the world currently faces. It's our view that philanthropic capital is some of the purest form of risk capital and can actually therefore be deployed to take chances, try innovations that almost no other type of capital can attempt. The key is to obviously, take on the right challenges and, fail in the right way and almost never in the same way multiple times. But that said, there is certainly a role that philanthropy, if taken together with other important partners like government, civil society organizations, and private sector, can play in a much more holistic and well-rounded approach to growth and development across the world, and certainly in a country like India. India's philanthropy sector, and we've been observers of developments in India over the last decade or so. We feel there is a very positive trend that is emerging in India with multitude of corporate foundations. Krishna mentioned the CSR law and how that has enabled more giving by businesses. There's also growth in more family foundations coming in, and also individual giving is rising because of India having a culture of giving, as well as some of the digital tools that have now come in, which are making it easier for people to give in a sustained manner. And all this taken together, we feel will help contribute to the government's goals to accelerate India's progress towards the SDGs by focusing on sustainable and equitable development. If you look at the philanthropy sector in India, there's a growth on almost every dimension. There are more organizations giving now than a decade ago. There's more money coming out into the sector than a decade ago. Organizations of philanthropies have obviously supported organizations, but they've also helped contribute to more infrastructure for development, stronger community networks, and also helping scale up implementation of proven interventions in ways that are helping drive progress towards the SDGs and towards the government's own goals. Most positively, at least from my perspective, we are also seeing greater instances of collaboration, not just between philanthropies, but also between philanthropies and government. And that, if it's done in a strategic way with a focus on outcomes and towards solving the greatest priorities for the country, we think, bodes very well for the future of philanthropy in India. Impossible to speak these days without a reference to COVID, and much of the narrative around COVID has an overhang of darkness and gloom. But one of the silver linings that we've seen, and this is a shared view with many others in the sector, is just the way the philanthropic ecosystem, the giving ecosystem in India stepped up in the face of COVID. I think COVID has unlocked possibly a lot more collaboration and cooperation among donors in India, both domestic as well as foreign donors, than I have at least experienced in my 15 years, working in the philanthropy sector. Some of the numbers are truly staggering. I mean, more than $1.5 billion were committed by philanthropies and corporate foundations towards the COVID response. There have also been some pretty innovative collaborative platforms that have come up in the face of COVID. Give India's COVID response fund raised over 225 crores, about $30 million from several categories like 20 odd high net worth individuals, 60 plus corporates, and over 350,000 everyday givers. Similarly, the ACT fund that was set up by leaders from India's startup ecosystem has raised over $15 million from domestic philanthropists, foreign foundations, corporates again. The rapid community response to COVID-19, or RCRC as it's called by in short, is this really innovative network, national coalition of 20 of the largest grassroots organizations who came together of their own volition. They have a large footprint in over 100 districts across 12 states in India. And they actually mobilized donors, I would say, to give jointly to them, domestic anchors like Argyam, the Azim Premji Foundation, foreign donors like Ford, also us, and many others who come together to fund this kind of collaborative approach. And to me, this kind of model is what gives me a lot of confidence as we look to the future. And the RCRC model, in some ways, given that most of the districts that they operate in are part of the government's flagship program, the aspirational districts. And I'm really glad Rakesh Ranjanji is here with us to speak more about that program. The aspirational districts is one of the most important and I would say ambitious initiatives, platforms in the country that the government has set up, because it aims at helping drive improvements in most of the key development indicators in the districts that need them the most. So the 112 aspirational districts have some of the weakest, had some of the weakest indicators when the program was conceptualized in 2018. And I said had because even in the last 2 years, we've seen some very impressive and significant improvements in outcomes in some of these districts, which obviously need to be consolidated. But if we are able to do that, certainly progress in these 112 districts is going to have a disproportionate impact on progress towards India's own SDGs. So, the aspirational districts is a great platform for many partners to come together and help celebrate, contribute to, also celebrate, I guess. It was great to learn that over 70% of the study participants are already working in the aspirational districts. The study also revealed that spending in these districts has increased by a factor of 6 over the last couple of years. And this brings together lots of different stakeholders, large corporate foundations like Piramal, Lupin, the NSE's giving, ITC, working very closely with some global development partners, foundations such as ours, and Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, who are all contributing towards the outcomes and improvements. And of course, all of this being driven by grassroots organizations who are really the doers, working very closely in partnership with district administrations under the oversight of NITI. And while the giving and the increase in fund flows to these aspirational districts is very heartening, this is also still only about 2% of state-specific funding as of FY19. And therefore, this number does need to grow. If the idea is that we want to give towards areas, geographies, people who are the most marginalized, certainly this number needs to improve. One of the key areas that we've been partnering with the NITI Aayog is to track the measurement of outcomes. And it's great that the NITI Aayog is taking an outcome-focused approach to tracking, reporting back on improvements. And we are currently in discussions with NITI to expand the footprint of that work to make sure that such measurement of outcomes continues across all 112 districts. We also have additional interventions to expand, financial inclusion in a subset of the districts that are directly under NITI Aayog. And we are also working on behavior change interventions through our partner, the Center for Social Behavior Change, to drive demand-side interventions to improve outcomes in many of the aspirational districts. We are also looking at scaling up our partnership with the Piramal Foundation and the TRIF, the Transforming Rural India Foundation, to support district administration, district leaders with on-ground coordination in support of COVID. From the Gates Foundation's perspective, we actually are, we see the aspirational districts as an anchor platform for our work over the next few years. And for us, a critical element of being able to have impact is going to be the opportunity to collaborate more strongly with government, but also with other donors and local foundations. So it's my hope that the report that Sattva has pulled together with very valuable inputs from many of you will help all of us inform the choices we make in terms of program design, create opportunities for us to learn from the best practices that others have demonstrated, and come up with more new interesting models for collaboration. And it is my fervent belief that India is going to be at the forefront of collaborative giving, and what we're able to achieve here will drive impact not just in India, but potentially help inform giving, collaborative giving across the world. And we look forward to working with anyone who's interested in joining hands to drive collaborative giving in India, especially with the lens on the aspirational districts. So thanks again for the opportunity to speak. Thanks, Krishna, to you, Aarti, and the Sattva team for the fantastic work that you've done, and look forward to an engaging evening of conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Menon. We really appreciate your kind words. And we are glad as well to have with us this evening Mr. Rakesh Ranjan, IAS. He is the advisor to Niti Aayog, and he will be sharing his views and highlight the need and opportunity to partner for development in the aspirational districts. Mr. Ranjan, over to you.
So, am I audible, please?
Yes, sir, you are.
Fine.
Loud and clear.
So, good evening to everybody, and thank you, Hari, for such a beautiful message. This kind of discussion, first thing is that it is very, very helpful to us, and I would like to congratulate as well as thank the organizer who have kind of arranged this and given me the opportunity to kind of introduce the aspirational district program, and also share some of the experiences that we have, and also some of the expectations. I will start with a hypothetical case. Suppose I am the district magistrate of one of the most backward district in India, and I have a lot of money actually. The schemes are there in whatever area I look at it. There are a good number of schemes run by the government of India, run by the state government. And that is my bulk of work, and the schemes are doing good also, and leading to some improvement. But I have certain critical need, which is either specific to district, or I do not get the sufficient fund in the scheme, and more important, that I have nobody in the backward regions to tell me that where and what is the good practice and how do I go about, even if I have a passion to do it. Now I need a set of, I wish I had a kind of a catalog of people whom I can put a call. They come with money, they come with expertise, they come with the experiences that they have jotted down, they have seen the world, and they told us, they know our district in the first place, and they told us that this is how you go about it. I don't expect too much money from them. I expect very little compared to the money that flows from government of India or from the state government. But what I need is something which is very critical, because the efficiency of other spending will depend, or the certain sectors which I want to kind of improve depends exactly, these are the marginal section, and for that some schemes are not covering me, or that's why I'm desperate to look for you. Now let me just change the hat and become one of the corporate, and or the CPSC, the Central Public Sector Enterprise, and I have money. I really am very convinced that I need this money to be spent in a manner that it is bring the maximum impact, whatever is my social goal, but I want to make this an impact. And I wish that I had a kind of catalog of the projects coming from the districts which need the fund most. And I should be very happy because it will help me in my board decision to find out that these are the projects which not only look nice on the paper, but also does a lot of kind of, there is experience that something has been done. And this more important thing, I need evidence that whatever project that I have done has led to improvement in certain indicator in a very concrete way. And it is not simply that I have done a project and the project has benefited very small number of people. And I come up with a feeling that, this kind could have been done something better. So your conference or this webinar, this discussion, the report that you're writing, if it helps us in coming to a better matchmaking between the district administration and between those who want to provide the fund and want to provide expertise, is something which is, in my opinion, is one of the most helpful work in the entire domestic funding, philanthropy and CSR space. So with this, I mean, that's why I'm just saying that I first thank the organizer for this particular discussion. Let me introduce the program very briefly. What we did was about 2018. There was very good rationale to do so. That good number of districts in India are doing pretty well. Good number of districts are doing very badly. And the Honorable Prime Minister realized that unless and until you fight the negativity in these districts, you will not be able to kind of generate the positive cycles of growth. And therefore, on data, we selected 112 districts across 26 states in India. And we went as a backward district. Under Planning Commission also, we were running a program called Backward Region Grant Fund, which was a very well-funded program, actually. But here, in this case, we went with this and went to the Honorable Prime Minister, and he just made one change and said, look, I mean, all is well. You name this as aspirational district and get the collectors to me. I want to speak to them. And in the January 2018, we got the collectors of all this district, and the Prime Minister told them that you must be very lucky for people, because here it is, I'm giving you a platform on which you can do something that when you retire, then you will think with great deal of satisfaction that you have done something which is actually give you happiness and peace, because you have made difference in life of those people who actually are left out by the system in a very large way. So here we are. We have 112 districts. When we designed that, what should be our focus? Our focus has been health, nutrition, education, and the financial inclusion and skill development. The idea is that use every such indicator which either improves the quality of life or improve the economic productivity, or at least the potential of economic productivity, because these are the difficult areas. So if we can target on people, improve their health and nutrition, improve their educational potential, then this becomes a very meaningful program in many ways. Quite naturally, it has huge overlap with the SDG programs of Government of India. It has very huge overlap with, you can present this program as the program for inclusive development. You can present this program as the evidence-based development. You can present this program as one of the key governance reform. So with this, what we have done is that we have looked into around 81 data points. We have a very live dashboard, and we have requested the district administration, and they do it every month. We keep on tracking the progress of these key indicators. Many of them are very non-glamorous, like visit of 4 visits of A&M worker to pregnant women, and registration of the pregnant women in the first trimester. These are very immunization of the children, learning outcome. I would say non-glamorous, but exactly what matters, and what matters quite substantially, because all of them are directed to India's one of the most chronic problem, as we see in the kind of keep on coming from the surveys of NHFS or from the survey of the UDICE or from the Pratham. Apart from this, Government of India has some very important program which is running in the kind of thinking on the mode of saturation. So like be it household electricity or the sanitation, and these were the performance indicator for these districts. But now we are taking up, we have kind of raised our aspirations, so we have taken the 5 water supply or something of that nature. Now, it is very important, as I said in the beginning, that while this is a program on which is robust monitoring, and since we are able to capture the progress, it is very easy for us to rank the district. And but we have found that if you indeed rank the district, you kind of stoke the sense of competition among the district administration, and that has helped. Because if you kind of tell a district that, look, you are number 110 out of 112 district, no district magistrate would like it. And the more so what they dislike is that their bosses, the chief minister, the chief secretary may also say, how come your district is doing so badly? So this is where the program hinges upon, just to kind of challenge the people that, look, I mean, you call it disturbed and difficult area, but you can definitely do a lot of good things. So one of the important things we realized early in this life, while this program was launched, is that there are a very large number of people who would like to contribute in this program, but the way the government schemes are, it's sometimes very difficult. Even if you have passion, you're an outsider, you cannot kind of come to the government part of government program and deliver result. Say, for instance, you might have a huge vacancy of teacher, but you can't go to government school and teach because the existing teacher or the existing system will not allow you to take up classes, because they will say this is meant for this, or you are not allowed, or you are outside curriculum, or there's a number of things. So what we created deliberately was that it is a platform where the foundations, where the domestic funders, they all come. But what we have not been able to create, let me tell you, and let me confess this, and why I consider this kind of webinar very important, is that we get good number of people who have money as well as intention as well as capability. They are very nice friend of ours. I mean, we consider Gates Foundation, Tata Trust, ITC, Piramal Foundation, Lupin. Good number of people have joined. Rema is here, CSR, NSC CSR Foundation. Good number of people have joined. We are very, very grateful, and they're doing a lot of good work. But we also come to, many good people come to us who do not have money, but they have the capabilities, they have the experience, and they want to come and work. Now, here is the problem, because I really do not know that how this matchmaking, I mean, what is the best way of matchmaking? Because the moment, I mean, we have some of the basic problem that we have identified is, if any of the domestic funder or philanthropy is working without consultation of the district administration, then there may be a chance that you work very well, but there may be a very good chance that you may not be able to put your fingers on the place where, or on the sector, or on the indicator in which the district has needed the money most critically, and not more than money, there's your expertise very critically. So our first recommendation to anybody who come and work with us is that work through the district administration. We would like you to have a nice dialogue with the district administration, understand the priorities of the district. We can also provide you the priority because data is right in front of us. We know that where the priority is, but you can also work with the district administration. We don't want something that you work on a disjointed sphere. So that is something which is the first and foremost thing which is important. The second challenge which we find and is that good number of people, and this I'm speaking from experience, that many of the corporates, especially in the CPSC, what has happened is that you have a rule that you say that I will do only capital expenditure. Now the problem with the district administration, had I been a district administration, you make a very beautiful hospital for me, but do not provide me doctor. How do I get it? Because no government scheme will tell me that since a corporate has made a nice hospital, I'm going to give you doctor. So if the moment you say that I will get only on the capital expenditure and not on revenue, we have a lot of problems. So I think this mindset need to change, that I think it has to be come from this, that here is a problem, here is the solution that I want, and for this solution, whatever it takes. Say, for instance, the Honorable Prime Minister keep on saying that by 2025, we must eliminate tuberculosis from this district, from all this, from India. Or say, look at Anemia Bharat, where we have a huge problem of anemia among the women in India. Now, a good number of this need a lot of outreach program. Because if you see the government indicators, how many people who have got tuberculosis have been treated, always the answer I get is 100%. Whereas if you ask the Rashtriya TB Unmulan Karikaram program, those who run the program, they say the figure is not more than 15 to 20%, because more than 80 to 85% people are not kind of reporting that they have the tuberculosis. So what is need is a huge outreach program, which, I mean, let me admit that government is not the best suited agency for the outreach program. It is definitely a good number of NGOs who can work, but the NGOs do not have the money. So they always come to us and say, आप किसी से हमारी बात करवा दीजिए, आप किसी से वो platform बनवा दीजिए. So here we are. If we have many suggestions in mind, this can be created district level fund where district administration, the corporate or the funders, those who want to kind of this thing, they have a say, and they provide the money to the most useful and most effective implementer. That is one possibility, because the moment you give it to a district, if it comes from a government setup, including the CPSC, we have a sort of what is known as L1, which hangs on us. This says that you can't have a kind of give a project to a person who is not the least cost, and generally that's not a very effective way of procuring knowledge or even implementation. If you are in a private philanthropy, we surmount some of the problems, because we can very easily say that, okay, I mean, you can provide this, and they can say it is just the competence that they match and they can provide. So what we would request the forum is to concentrate on, or to kind of find solution, if not today, kind of this much. I just want to leave these as a thought, that the practical difficulty that we face is that good number of these initiatives, even if very well intentioned, completely bypass the district administration. The district administration itself sometimes is not very knowledgeable about it. They really do not have any idea that how much CSR is possible, how much of the assistance is available. I can give you an example. We in CPSC, with the Central Public Sector organizations, we gave an advisory that every year we will take up a theme. And for last 2 years, we have been taking theme, which is not a surprise at all. It is health and nutrition and education. So we said that 60% of the CPSC CSR, which is around 3,500 crores, would be spent all over India on these themes. And while you are deploying this fund, you will give preference to aspirational district if the projects come from them. Whenever I look at the chart, the smarter the DM, smarter the district, greater the money that they get. It has got nothing to do with the requirement of the district. It is more for the kind of the activity, the passion that the district magistrate show that they can get the money. Or in some cases, if this district is so well provided for by the presence of large number of CPSC or from the private corporate, like districts in Maharashtra, district in say Korba in Chhattisgarh, Visakhapatnam, these are the districts which get a lot of money. And the districts where a lot of need is there, they don't get that kind of money. So I know that they're not easy solutions. I had a long discussion with both Secretary, Corporate Affairs and TPE, but these are not easy because the money, how to deploy the money lies with the board of the organization. But our experience indicate that if you work with the district administration and also while sanctioning a project, have a very clearly defined outcome that what you're trying to do. If you can ensure that the project that you have taken is the best for that or the most critical for that district, and you have a very clearly well-defined outcome in that, as we are trying to focus in aspirational district on outcome, that if you have an outcome, then all that you need to have is that where there is a mechanism for measuring of the outcome or not. Thanks to Gates Foundation, as well as in past with the Tata Trust, we have put in a system where the outcome are being measured. First thing, we are requesting the district administration and the ministries to provide us the information on the outcome. And second, that we do the survey. So these are some of my views that it is extremely good platform. It's extremely sensible and important discussion. We need to have the maximum advantage that we want to take with whatever money is there, even if the volume of the money pale in insignificance compared to the money that flows to the district administration in terms of the government scheme. But please remember that government scheme has a lot of rigidities about it, even if we try our best that we make it as flexible as possible. So there are critical needs that we are not able to cover, and those critical needs can be done very easily with domestic funder. It is very good thing. One thing that I want to know, because I get a lot of such requests. We get a lot of philanthropies come and work that we will do analysis and we will kind of come and tell you that what the problem is. I have two requests with most of them. First request is that first try see that what is being attempted and why are we failing. So if you are doing the analysis, try find out that what is there already on the ground. Because many times in analysis and in the recommendation, they tell us exactly what is there on the ground and on which we have failed for quite some time. So on that, first thing is that if you want to tell us that a government scheme, say Matritva Vandana Yojana, is not working properly or not working as per its potential, then tell us that because you have superior knowledge compared to many of us. So while you're on ground, please tell us that what is it which if we change, then it will work better. And second thing that they want an analysis and they want to establish that the women health is very important. Those are the something which are the very given wisdom. What we want is far more specific, and that's why I always say to anybody who come, here are the indicators, here are the districts. If you can improve it, and nothing further. We don't need anything more than that. So employ your fund, employ all expertise like that. So again, to the organizers in Sattva, I'm not one-to-one with many of you, but I can see the name here, and Mr. Sri Krishna Sridhar Murthy, and Aarti, who has been sending me mail, and Archana from BMGF. Thank you very much for this thing. We are actually the users, and the report that you have released, we will read it. If you find that, I'm sure that there's a lot of things, but the long term is, if you're a better matchmaker, it makes a lot of sense to everybody. So thank you with this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, really. Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible. I'm just going to present the results very shortly. I know that we are all waiting to hear from all of our panelists as well as soon as possible. And thank you, Rakesh Ranjan ji, for giving us a lot of useful perspective around the aspiration districts, and Hari Menonji for giving so much of a overall perspective on what it means for collaborative philanthropy. Just going over to present some of the results from our research. Right. So when Sattva started working with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on this study about October 2019, our objective was to see, there's a lot of data around spending, but what could we learn more about how the spending happens? What could we learn more about the objectives, the journey, the various inflection points, and get a deep qualitative understanding of the drivers in terms of strategy and implementation, the various pathways that different foundations have taken based on various assets that they've had at their disposal and the kind of resources that they've been able to plow into their philanthropy in the domestic context. And three, what are the kind of collaborations? And more interestingly, I mean, it's hard enough to be able to start a collaboration, but many of these foundations have been able to keep it thriving and grow it and expand it in interesting ways. So these were all the questions that were on our mind, which we wanted answers to. And hence we went and investigated through the study by meeting over 75 leaders from 47 domestic institutions. And when we say domestic institutions, we defined it as CSR, corporate foundations that have been started by CSR and CSR of Indian companies, family foundations of started by Indian HNIs, and independent foundations started for particular purposes. We chose 4 significant sectors based on key priorities, because you also said that let's try and understand this also from a sectoral perspective and see if we have something useful to chronicle. And which is why we went to understand further in depth WASH, agricultural livelihoods, health systems and health delivery, and women empowerment. So these are the 4 that we deep dive into, and the report is there on the website, and we found so many interesting cases across these participating domestic foundations of various ways in which they have brought these assets to be leveraged. They have navigated through their journey in philanthropy in various districts in India and partnered. We find that there are 6 types of assets and a 7th partnership presence that has that is visible to us. We see that, I mean, we know that domestic foundations have grown to play a critical role in India's journey towards sustainable and equitable development. They have outpaced the international funding. There are many evidence points of scalable pilots in the Indian context, which then went on to partner with the government, with other global foundation, with many other intermediaries to then scale this from the kind of demonstrative goods. And domestic foundations have also increasingly played more of a knowledge role, more of a bringing together the ecosystem in terms of understanding and implementing systemic impact and systemic transformation systems as well. So we find that in terms of assets, domestic foundations have been able to leverage physical infrastructure by virtue of their parent entity in different programs. Their technical know-how has been brought into force in their programs. They've been able to facilitate ecosystem mobilization at right up to the SHG and grassroots level, as much as zooming out and saying, can we get together business and impact leaders into one platform? They've demonstrated ability to create innovative solutions for various problems, able to leverage links with larger community networks, and then have also been able to plan and execute programs to successful implementation in partnership with various different other organizations as well. And they've been able to partner to support and extend what they've done with other players in the ecosystem. As Hari Menaji explained, the COVID, I mean, we can't escape the COVID pandemic when we, and that's the lens that we also had to take in the light of what has been happening in the last few months. And in terms of spending, while the disruptions have imposed significant resource constraints, but we've seen that domestic foundations have leveraged non-financial assets in many different creative ways to be able to come to the call of their communities and grantees. Like ACC Trust mobilizes entire SHG Federation. Aditya Birla Group were able to leverage infrastructure assets for healthcare infrastructure creation. The Dr. Reddy Foundation reoriented a lot of their health skilling programs. Indigo developed a strong online volunteering system, and we know that Ambuja Simmons was able to mobilize a lot of the Sakhis that they had on the ground already. So we see a lot of these enduring asset creation as positive signs now in the rebuilding phase, once the relief phase has in some sense gone to a taper. There has been funds plowed into different national programs and different national funds. And at the same time, we've also seen that the CSR funding into the aspirational districts has gone 6x, but still continues to be 2%. And as Rakesh Ranjan ji said, many of these districts still continue to get 0% of funding, and while some of the other districts have slightly more than that. So therefore, knowing that funds are increasing, but also knowing that there is a regional skew, what may be the kind of matchmaking resources that we can deploy to make this more inclusive and equitable is something that we started to investigate. And many such examples have also come in from the research. We see that in the journey that I'd mentioned of domestic foundations, while they may begin with a social cause that they're passionate about and comes in from the vision of the corporate leadership, as they respond to local communities and plow in the business expertise to come into the CSR or the corporate foundation programs, and once expertise is developed and they've been able to see some of these outcomes, we've seen pivots based on their expertise in going more into riskier areas, going more into proof of concepts. And then again, once the proof of concepts have fructified, what are the scale models that can be plowed in again, so that eventually they may be able to exit some of the districts where or the communities where programs are running well to areas which need more funds or more resources and so on, and also provide the base for replication. Moving on to ecosystem enablement and policy alignment as being the vehicles. Some examples just at the bottom of the slide. We've also seen that while the partnership piece has itself been like a continuum, we've seen that there are several low-hanging fruit established partnership models that have been chronicled in the study, where there's been knowledge sharing, knowledge creation, and alignment in existing programs, so that there can be mutual sharing of resources, information, and several other non-monetary assets in the same geographical area of operation, as well as diversifying the funder base into bringing in more implementing partners, and therefore being able to see more ideas seeded in implementation. We've also seen the slightly other end of the spectrum in terms of emerging partnership models, which are more high touch, with where funders have been able to come together and say, together, let's anchor this project or program and take it forward. Joint advocacy, pooled funding kind of establishments, and in a particular geographical area, even the setup and running of joint ventures, like for example, the Maharashtra Village Social Transformation Foundation, which had 60+ corporates come in and HNIs come in and literally create a new vehicle to then work on rural development in Maharashtra and so on. So, and we see that these are pathways. I mean, while light touch partnerships are easier to establish with complementary assets, they've also been able to be unlocked to a larger scale to combat COVID related disruptions, and to unlock the other side of emerging partnership models, flexibilities beyond the existing theories of change, a value alignment, and in some sense, a credibility and different alignment around the way they think about their mission and vision has had to happen, which has taken longer and has involved a lot of ownership and co-accountabilities. But we see very hearteningly so many that have emerged, and what Hari Menon-ji also pointed to in his speech, in the light of COVID, just really collaboration has become the norm. And later today, we hope to hear a lot more about how these partnerships as well have evolved from organizations. With that, I'd love to. I mean, in the online world, there's nothing to substitute the holding of a report and opening it. But in the online world that we are all now been conscribed to, this is we have a QR code. It is to substitute that. So this is the QR code, and here is the report that is available online. To download, and with a lot of the visuals. So what Rakesh Ranjanji referred to as, can we really say district by district who is working? We've got a first cut of that kind of a visual and database. So really happy to have been supported by the BMGF India office to be able to put together this work. So with that, I request Rakesh Ji, Krishna, and Hari Menon-ji to just declare the report launched, and we just move on to the rest of the evening. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Report is launched.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rakesh Ji, Krishna, and Hari Menon-ji. And with that, we have a small message from Srimati Rajshi Birla, and I'd like for us to go into that and play it out before we move to the panel discussions. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Kudos to Hari Menon, Karuna Sehgal, and Arnav Kapoor from the Gates Foundation for having sparked the study on the domestic institutional philanthropy and its evolution. And of course, the Sattva Foundations, Sri Krishna Sridhar Murthy and Aarti Mohan for having moved the study at the ground level. The findings have just been shared with you. It comes as no surprise as the report avers that social equity, albeit at a minimal level, can only be attained when corporate foundations, family foundations, and the government, along with NGOs, pull in the same direction with a shared sense of purpose. In recent times, this has been the writing on the wall. I'm sure all of you will concur that collaboration is the only way forward. Another significant pointer culled from the report is the emergence of a paradigm shift towards needs-based outcomes-driven approach, integrating responsibility and accountability. In my view, the social sector development system is increasingly being put in place in a professional manner. This is an insightful report that has some excellent learnings in the development ecosystem, addressing the heart of the problem and its resolution. In the current context, COVID-19, as you know, has upended, disrupted, destroyed, uprooted lives and mangled dreams. Regardless, our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has ensured that the pain is minimized and people comforted as much as possible. His lieutenants, governments across the nation have been instructed to leave no stone unturned and march on and fight the pandemic. The private sector and NGOs from across the country and the world have pitched in admirably in this endeavor. COVID-19 is an example where collaboration is the key. In this milieu, going forward is the call out for better public health care, education, sustainable livelihoods, attention to agriculture, and social security. These are areas where most of you are already engaged in. I venture to suggest that you up the ante. That said, today I have been specifically tasked to share with you one of our very fulfilling experiences in the healthcare domain, where we met with resounding success, largely due to a path-breaking collaboration between national and international organizations. Our vision was to eradicate polio. The stirring cause of complete freedom from polio was taken up by the Government of India, alongside Rotary International and the Aditya Birla Group, WHO, UNICEF, CDC, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation worked ceaselessly to contain the crippling disease. And India today walks on as a polio-free country. Fighting polio in India has been a great challenge. Every newborn up until the age of 5 years has to be given the polio drops. Let me give you a feel of our work as its applicability stretches to every field and it relates at several levels to the COVID pandemic. First of all, we collectively designed a polio campaign that was very creative and effective in its message. It was fixated on raising the awareness levels, how we should not allow any child to be crippled by polio. In India, we are faced with complex conditions. We have challenges like a huge population, very high birth rates, and extensive interstate movement of immigrants. So even if one child misses the polio dose, there is the danger of the virus resurfacing and polio dotting India's horizon again. So together we continuously deploy high quality vaccination teams across the breadth and depth of our country while educating parents and ensuring that every newborn until 5 years of age is polio protected. We in the IAAA group in the last 5 years alone have administered 1 billion polio drops in over 75,000 youths. Even as India today is a polio-free country, we cannot be complacent. We continue to endeavor with governments pan-India, WHO, Rotary International, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to ensure that polio does not resurface. Thanks to this collaboration and the sense of shared purpose, unflinching commitment to a common vision, India remains a polio-free country. I'm sure your deliberations today on a collaboration to maximize impact post-COVID will help you work out a roadmap, engaging foundations, NGOs, and the government in fruitfully fulfilling the hopes and aspirations of a people not so privileged. I join you in reaffirming our intent of forging forward and breaking fresh ground in the development ecosystem through this common bond. Thank you and God bless. Good evening.
And now we will move on to the panel discussions. The first panel is on collaborating to maximize CSR and domestic foundations' impact post-COVID-19. Ms. Aarti Mohan will be the moderator, and I invite our panelists, Ms. Pearl Tiwari from Ambuja Cement Foundation, Mr. Pratyush Panda from the ACC Trust, Ratna Mehta from the Wadhwani Foundation, and Srinivas Shroff from REC Foundation.
Thank you, Alicia. And it's great to have esteemed panelists here with me. I know that Srinivas ji got called into an urgent meeting with the Bihar government just half an hour ago. So, we will, I'm hoping that he'll be off that meeting and join us back, but we will get started just in the paucity of time. Our panelists are very illustrious, and they've been at the design and implementation end of many innovative partnerships. So would love to start there and have this panel as an opportunity to talk about a lot of the areas that we touched upon in the report, and we've been able to find through our research. So with that, I'm going to start with Pearl Ji. Pearl at the Ambuja Cement Foundation, as an implementation foundation with such a large footprint and multiple partnerships, it'd be great to hear from you. How have these partnerships also helped you to navigate the COVID pandemic?
Thank you, Aarti. Am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Aarti. So the Ambuja Cement Foundation, over this 27 years that we've been working on development, has traditionally believed that partnerships is the only way to go. And really, we've partnered for just about most of our large verticals. We've partnered for livelihoods, for health, for water, for all of these. We've honed our skills along with these partners, and over a period of time really scaled up some of these projects, whether they be in different geographies. That's how we've really moved from the original 18 districts of Ambuja to now 44 districts. We work in 33 skilling centers. All of this because we've closely collaborated, and like Rakesh ji mentioned, we work with the district administration wherever we work. So really with the government, with NABARD pooling in, and also with corporates and philanthropists. And we believe that it's because of these great partnerships we had that, when COVID really struck in March, and after that first phase when everybody was looking at relief, with sanitization and maybe rations, and which of course we all did, but we knew very early on that this was going to be in the long haul, and so the whole rebuilding phase was going to require our efforts as well. So very early on, first people that we partnered with really were the community themselves. So our approach itself is one where, we work through people's partnerships, but we create a lot of these people's institutions, be they women's federations or farmer producer companies or, agricultural extension and sakhis that we have in the communities. And we really partnered with them. And then we got directed to a very good organization who we hadn't worked with earlier, which is Noora Health, which was into really looking at content and creating information content. And with the help of them and on digital platforms, using simple WhatsApps and, simple videos and audios, messages, we were able to push out about 252 messages on a regular basis to about 7 lakh households, just to make sure that they got the right messages on hand wash, on social distancing, and on mask wearing on a very regular basis. So we really used that force that we really had. And over a period of time, we as we went along, we mapped the elderly in every one of our households. So we work in about 2,000 odd villages, and we mapped the elderly population to make sure that specific messages were going to them. This whole idea was to just control COVID from reaching places where the public health system already looked very weak. And I think that, today we are really mapping and collecting data month on month to look at how our districts and how our villages are performing vis-a-vis the rest of the district. And I'm very, very happy to say that, while our numbers, even today when things are rising in the rural areas, are, there's a very nice data point which talks about the number of cases of COVID per lakh population. And in places where that number has gone beyond 100 per lakh population, we are still in the first, within 15 or 16 in number. So it's obviously there to show that, if the community is given its own ownership, they can really rise up to the occasion. And then as we built on, we realized there were stresses for farmers when they started going into agriculture. So we used our old partnership of, we are part of a very large Better Cotton Initiative project, where IDH, which is the International Trade, Sustainable Trade Organization, partners into that. They've seen our work, and along with them, we were able to build an insurance product for about 25,000 farmers on COVID. And having demonstrated that, today we are able to create far more demand for COVID insurance in rural communities. And a lot of our people are now buying those small ticket insurance, which is going to insure them for the entire period. Then we were led to an organization in Pune when we realized that there was so much of stress and anxiety. And so we trained about 29 of our own people first, Sakhis and our teams, and through them about 500 odd community members, frontline people who would manage basic anxiety and stresses in the villages. And so we were able to really deliver that as well. And as we speak now, there is a huge need for external oxygen therapy support. And with the isolation centers that have been so well set up by the public health system in so many of our districts. So with our old partners, so we work with CIPLA, for example, on a COPD project, which is for respiratory healthcare in rural India. And immediately with them, we put together, providing of oxygen concentrators to these villages. So today, the way we are looking at it, I completely, and my entire team believes that no one party can do anything alone. We've always believed this. We've always worked with everybody. And today we've actually put COVID it's integrated into all our other programs, because you can't really leave everything else out and, just focus on COVID. So we've gone back to our water, we've gone back to our farmers, to our skills. Everything is now online. We've got, as we speak, about 3,000 odd students online being trained on skilling. So everything is back with just COVID in there. And I think we couldn't have done this if we didn't have partners who kind of very readily came and worked with us.
Great, thank you. And it's so interesting to see how you've orchestrated each of these partnerships based on needs and gone along. Great segue into Ratna, who you've been leading the India efforts of the Global Vadhvani Foundation and part of the leadership team as well there. And given the footprint of Vadhvani Foundation has been global, what's been your experience of partnering in India? Vis-a-vis, if there are any examples, and how from globally Vadhvani Foundation, how have you seen it evolve, and particularly now in the light of COVID?
Thank you so much, Aarti, and good evening to all the participants as well as the panelists. Thank you for having us over here. So, Aarti, I think what Ms. Pearl said, taking a leaf from that page, I think partnerships are very, very important to drive the agenda. For instance, Vadhvani Foundation has always been focused on fostering growth in emerging markets. So, as you said, it's a global foundation. It works across India, Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latam. And in all these regions, our objective is to foster economic activity by backing the right entrepreneurs who in turn are creating jobs. So livelihood is a kind of a common fabric which binds us. And right now, because of COVID, and also because the stage at which India is right now, jobs are a big issue. And now with SMEs impacted severely, I think that kind of gets a double whammy, right? Because the impact is much higher on job creation because of the job losses and the impact on the SMEs. So what we are doing is that when we are running our programs, we are running them in partnership with others who can effectively supplement us in 2-3 ways, right? One is alignment of interests, that people who are focused on SMEs and job creation, so we're doing certain partnerships over there. For example, we're running an SME program, which is basically a transformation program where our teams are really helping the SMEs, with pro bono consulting to get out of this situation. So it's like a sustainability and a stability program, and then bringing back the growth. So the best way over there was to target some of the SMEs through banks and NBFC. So we've got partnerships with banks like SBI. We've got partnerships with NBFCs like ILFS, Clicks Capital, etc., to target some of the SMEs. So that's one area of partnership. Second, we are also funding some of the early stage startups who are driving innovative ideas. So on that front, we are focused on healthcare and job creation. Healthcare is a big area which is going to see a lot of metamorphosis over the next couple of years. And therefore, we are funding some of the companies who can actually drive change or drive a systemic level change to improve the healthcare system. And there we are partnering with other platforms, with investors. We are talking to Niti Aayog, because Niti is like a model agency which kind of drives innovations and the startup programs which they have. So we're working alongside all of these players, because alone, if I go and try to source companies who are doing innovation, it will be a long road ahead, right, in terms of identifying and all. But Niti has a whole bunch of startups, right? For example, we partnered with certain investor platforms which are anyways doing work in this space, and that helps us to come together and partner, not only for funding, but we are also operationally helping some of these startups to kind of drive their agenda. So partnerships becomes very important, because it helps you fill in the gaps in terms of what you're trying to do. So for example, the banks are helping us source things, the investor partnerships are helping us to drive the operational agenda. So in that sense, I think each partnership has its own agenda, and if you're able to kind of put a string of pearls together, and that can really help you build an ecosystem which can drive impact.
Thank you so much, Ratna. Very interesting ways in which you've partnered with so many different kind of actors as well on job creation and health. With that, would love to go over to Pratyush ji. Pratyush ji, you probably leveraged every resource there can be and every asset there can be in far-flung areas across the plants and states that you work in. How has COVID enabled you to, one, be able to continue to leverage and adapt these resources, to make sure that a lot of the nonprofits, the SHGs, so many of the communities that we work with are not unable to continue their work or are impeded in their work because there has been such a scarcity of funding as well, right? Like, I mean, and it's been interesting to see how you've gone through with ACC Trust on this. So would love to hear about it.
Thank you, Aarti. Hope I'm audible to all of you. Very good evening, everyone. So let me start with a small case of Sanjukta Bage, a tribal lady, an aspirational district. And currently she's part of the district planning team as well. 3 years back, post demonetization, we trained her on, instead of financial literacy, we called it digital literacy. So that time we thought, let's start doing something. almost 3 years back. And she is also a part of our SHG Federation, the registered federation, as a leader today, having 2 of the APO within that. One of them is women APO. And by this time, she has already trained through master trainers more than 3,000 women on this entire process. And they started doing Aadhaar UIP based transactions 3 years back, almost 2.5 years back. But it never got into limelight because banks were accessible, everything was there. People have a tendency to go everything do directly, physically kind of thing. During this pandemic, the same team with 7 POS machines and over 20 SHG leaders, every month they are cracking 5 lakhs transaction when their SHG members are sitting at home. And why this was possible? This was possible because she is an aspirational district, that's a district planning process, she is part of that, and there are multiple partners and who help us in doing that. NCPI through SIDBI and ACS Limited, a joint partnership project has started. And this was the first first project for us where we have not signed MOU with any of the partner and we started working. We said, let's not do any formalities, bureaucratic things. Let's start doing whoever can do whatever. Government of state government participated, local NGO participated, other corporates participated, and then we learned before that whatever is to do is to do a lot of MOU signing, who will do what, who will not do what, and by the time when it comes to work, something will fizzle out of hand. And by taking that as an example, and today now they have already crossed 30 lakhs of transaction. And you know where? I'm talking about a small panchayat inside a reserve forest, and one side is dam, one side is reserve forest, only one side has a road. And from there, the state capital is more than 600 kilometers. And they are doing it flawlessly by themselves. And by taking that learning, and 2 years back, we had our own DISA centers, which are like mostly alternate livelihood centers. So we said anybody coming to that center, we are ethical responsible to provide a livelihood to him or her. So whether it is a farmer, SHG woman, or youth, or anybody, or PWD persons. So we started taking partnership from different angles without signing MOU with them. So today, proudly, I'm saying more than 10 corporates are partners, like it is Schneider Electricals, Sahi Exports, HP, Tata Voltas, many other of them are there. In addition to that, we also taken support of the local NGOs. Those are locally available in that area. Those who knows that area better than anybody else, I mean, especially in the community. So for better count of the last mile. In addition, we also have taken support of two other innovative part of the entire collaboration platform was taking help of social startups and the fellowship programs. So today the Vitor Health, AVT Learnings, you know, these are the kind of people, those who can come to us and started working with us. So Vitor Health is what? They have a backpack packet which provides you more than 20 non-invasible, what you call that, services on doorstep without touching the patient out there. Even they also have a thermal scanner those days, 2.5 years back with them. We never thought of that this will be so useful during COVID time. And we used to reach out to roughly 6,000 to 8,000 of truckers. That project was specially for truckers of that area. But now they have access their services not only to my plant, but also to all nearby community who can afford. And affordability is pretty less. You know, if you do that 20 tests going to any private hospitals, it will cost you not less than $500. In these cases, hardly 100 rupees. And the reports are online and on a printout on your hand if you need those. AVT Learnings, who was providing us government curriculum support in Orissa, in Oriya language, and all government curriculum from class 6 to 12th was online. And we helped them to reach out to roughly 3,000 population before COVID-19, I mean, during last 1.5 years. Now they have reached out through us to more than 80,000 population in the entire state. And when the schools are closed, the rural government school going students at home with minor support, they are getting the services at their own village, maybe 4 or 5 students, because everybody cannot afford to have a smartphone in hand. So 4 or 5 students coming together in one home and taking their class daily online on a regular basis. So precisely we're focusing more on 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 kind of thing. And in overall process, government has a very pivotal role by creating this platform, nurturing this platform. And through our support, we can brought a lot of people. And thankfully, they were all with us before COVID. Today, people may say the fund is a crunch, but because of the collaborative platform with a little fund of everyone, everybody can produce a high impact project in that area. And everybody is there today. Nobody has left us by this time without signing MOU with them. So that's the power of if you work closely with the government, with the district planning, action planning process, and by taking a collaborative platform where everybody can come anytime and go, but the mission objective remains same. And you must know that there is no role ambiguity, who is doing what. And people are free to come and go out. And this kind of platform are really working even on this COVID-19 and pandemic. Thank you.
Great, great. So many interesting things around the modalities, roles, being in touch with them before, because it's been hard to get in touch with people and work together because of the social distancing. So this is great to understand how you've gone about it. I think that while it's been in the first round, it's been so nice to hear about the panelists talking about what kind of partnerships. But partnerships look a lot better while describing and on paper when they've been realized. As compared to the process of realizing it, which is really hard. And to get people to, if we look at the true purpose of collaboration, and if everybody is collaborative, everybody's collaboratively designing, implementing everything, it's very hard. So I'd love to hear from all three of you, what have been some of these difficulties or considerations and how have you mitigated it? Maybe we start with you, Ratna. Sorry, Ratna, you're on mute. Yeah. Still on mute, can't hear you. Yeah, if you could. Yes, yes.
Some problem.
Yes.
Host is sending some pins, so it got unmuted. All right. Okay, you can hear me now? Right. So I think the considerations for the partnerships, the one basic thing which is very, very important is the objective, right? That whomever you partner with, what is the objective that they have and what is the objective that you have? And at times, the objectives might be very similar in the same bucket, but making sure that the partnership is serving to your end goal as well as their end goal is very, very important. For example, when we are doing funding partnerships with people, we say that we will collaborate and look at some of the companies. They may want to do certain other things which they can pursue, right? But for us, we will kind of partner with the projects that we are interested in. So that flexibility is important, because otherwise what happens is that at the end of the day, you realize that you wanted to do A and A plus B got done or C got done because of the overall platform which was very fixated. So I think that the flexibility and the understanding over there is important. And second, I think is the gap measurement, Aarti. So in the sense that, for example, we are a global foundation. There are certain things that we can do on the ground, and there are certain things that probably a partner's can help in doing. Right? So in terms of implementation, if there are people who have been on the ground and implementing it, that becomes very easy for us. So for example, if there is a gap in terms of doing certain things, okay, we can look for partnerships in those areas. For example, let me give an example over here. So for example, some of the companies that we are looking at, okay, we fund them, but they still have a working capital requirement. So how do you bridge that gap? Because, we don't have a working capital fund with ours and we can't fund them. And every time to go to another foundation and say, let's put together certain funds and then we can fund them, takes its own time and pace. So what we are thinking of doing is we are thinking of collaboratively going to some of the banks and all to kind of have a dedicated channel for some of the companies we fund, because once we fund, we put in grants, we put in equity, it becomes that much more easier for them to get debt. So these are some of the kind of partnerships or some of the ways to kind of make use of the partnerships and mitigate some of the things by virtue of which there can be alignment of interests.
Thanks, Ratna. Would love to hear from you, Pearl, in terms of what has been the, particularly in the remote areas where the presence and penetration of partners itself might be, and therefore working through that.
Yeah, so I'd also go with what Ratna said in terms of everyone comes with their own objectives, with their own agenda, and that's fine because there's really so much to do. So, I mean, we are usually implementing partners for a whole lot of people who want to invest in the kind of models that we have honed over the last, 2.5 decades. But, the way we've gone around it is that even though we may think that a particular agenda is required in a particular area, we try and build and co-create with that partner depending on what that partner is comfortable with, and start small. I mean, I've seen in our experience that very often, even though people sit on large funds or have large interests, they want to feel the partnership, they want to start somewhere. And I think we should be flexible and open to be able to do that, demonstrate excellence. That's what we really believe in, that whenever there's a partner, however small the partnership, in terms of either this outreach or in terms of the funding or whatever it might be, you demonstrate excellence to the extent that the partner really starts feeling comfortable. To talk about one example, I mean, there's one area, for example, which is very water stressed. And we really believed that there was a huge potential to do water harvesting and water projects in that area. But when we had talked to a partner, that particular partner's entire sole interest at that time was more to do with livelihoods from skilling perspective. And that was also a need. So we started with skilling with that particular partner. And over a period of time, because of the demonstration of the excellence of those skilling centers that we run for them, and with honest reviews, I really believe that's so important, to go back to a partner and to build that relationship with honest reviews of what's working, what's not working, that we've now been able to broaden. Today, they themselves are talking about how do we extend it in this geography now to something like water and working with women. So we are kind of co-creating another larger project with them. So I really believe that, that's one thing about partners, that one's got to be flexible. But even from an implementation end, there has been a lot of learning that we have to learn to also be flexible, move out of our geographies, be more open to what other people want. Very often partners like to send their own auditors, their own consultants. Those consultants come up with ideas. There have to be platforms where you can, very honestly discuss what works, what doesn't work, and be able to build that partnership. For us, that is what has really worked, Aarti.
Thanks, Paul. Interesting perspective there. Pratishji, would love to understand from you also what hasn't worked, right? Like, and how did you overcome those?
So, I've realized when you work on a collaborative platform, some of the social principles has to be go on a toss, world upside down. So here in collaboration, you cannot work on an equitable theory, equity will fail you. You have to go on equality method of working. I can cite a small example. Instead of example, I must tell you, even if somebody of your platform is a non-funding partners, maybe contributing maybe 2% to the entire process. If you have 5 partners, the credibility should be shared equally, 20% each. If you say, no, I'll share only those who have contributed more, they are like big brother of the platform, your platform for sure is going to crack. Give equal importance, equal measures to everyone.
Water conservation agenda.
Because everyone has contributed to that process, we all have agreed upon. So if you go on that process, people are there. And don't put somebody into compulsion that if you are here, you are bound to stay here for this many time or this many years. You're bound to give kind of their funding and all. So this is how the bitterness comes out. Some companies, some NGOs, some foundation might have some issues coming out 5 years down the line or 5 months down the line. So gladly you all have to accept. Second, whatever you do as a district as a unit, and the district has its own district planning process, and try to visualize what exactly you are contributing to that process, whether it is 100%, 20% out of that, or 10% of that, again, then bifurcate among yourself, so that all your partner can see the larger picture of the district at least. Forget about state and country, but at least district picture has to be seen in front of them, and then they realize this is what I'm contributing. These 2 factors are taken care of. your platform, your collaboration goes a long way. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that would love to also, I mean, there are things that we're working through and there are things that we are mitigating and going forward. But what are the top 2-3 critical things that you believe are important and the kind of things you'd like to see in partnerships and collaborations going forward? Considering we've built so much momentum through COVID in people coming together, how do we make it count a lot more non-incrementally? Pratyush, maybe we just start with you this time.
Maybe if you have seen 5 years down the line, the special purpose vehicle was started by government during UPA 2, mostly with greenfield projects, where the new project proponent coming there will deposit certain amount to the district and to a separate account, and they will do. That didn't work much those days. But with the present aspirational district process of where Niti Gavi is strongly monitoring, there is a measuring mechanism to it. The data flows from district to state to center on a monthly basis. There are third-party auditors going down the line. If those, whether with the same name or some other name, maybe on the aspirational district process, you can have a collaborative fund kitty, where people can come on a small or big way. Both ways should welcome them, and from that project should work as a supplementary project to all ongoing government projects, because most of the government projects, they have budget allocation on the most of the specific heads. There is nothing like any other, even if any other is there, is a very small amount. So the fill in the blanks, to bridge that gap, if this SPV funding can be done through collaborative platforms, especially by the corporate friends of that area, will be very useful for the increasing the human development indices of that risk.
Very useful perspective. Over to Pearl.
So, I mean, besides, being very open and honest with the partner, I think if I were to look at the 1 or 2 very critical things that really keeps these long-lasting partnerships, I would think that what we've done and what has worked for us is to have a very strong system of reporting and monitoring. And I think, we've customized a monitoring system for all of our programs, which actually looks at outcomes. So I don't think, partners, whether they are funding partners or otherwise, want to see anecdotal evidence for the rest of their lives. I mean, they want to see outcomes, they want to see impacts. And so we are able to today subject a lot of our work to all that impact analysis, because we have that kind of data that's coming through our monitoring system. And I think that's very, very critical in today's context of development. I think another one I would say is, the bandwidth to give different types of reporting to different kinds of partners. I mean, today we have, only in our skilling space, we have 35 partners. Now, each of them, if they're corporates especially, have their own system in which they want you to report, and you have to be able to give it to them, whether it's reporting on programs or audits, you really have to give it to them, and with complete honesty and ethics and the right kind of things on board. I think those are some of them. And finally, what has also worked on the ground for us is, very often you create budgets, which always have a little bit of a cushion. And our experience is that at the end of the year, invariably, because some projects didn't take off, or that you were able to do them very cost effectively, some monies within projects get left back. And I've always seen that in our experience, project partners who are especially funding partners feel very comfortable when you go back to them and say, this was the utilization and this is the money, and how do we now use this money, and co-create with them a project which might be of great interest to them to really extend what you're doing. So some of these things, I think it's again, again, I go back to that building of relationship through all these unwritten systems, if I may. So I think those are what makes our partnerships stick and grow the way they have. Just to give an example of something like a NABARD, we used to have one project with NABARD about in the early days, and maybe 5-6 years ago we had about 3, 4, 5 projects, but today we have about 35 different projects with NABARD all over the place. And that could not have happened if they hadn't built that we hadn't been able to build our credibility with them, and they hadn't been able to build that relationship. So I think it's a lot about relation building and monitoring and reporting, which works.
Great. And Ratna?
I think there are 2-3 things which are important, which deepen partnerships over time. So one is, and we are doing a lot of new things, right? So for us, it is important that we start small and we start with a light touch kind of a partnership, and over time build on it, right? You add on peripheral things around it and then strengthen it, saying start with one thing and continue with the relationship and add more things to it. Second, I think is monitoring, as Paul also mentioned, is very, very important. So, having milestones to evaluate, saying that after 3 months, after 6 months, let's see, where we are, and define proper impact KPIs, like number of lives impacted, what is the depth at which they are impacted, what is our role in doing that, what is the role of the organization whom we are funding. So I think defining the impact KPIs and measuring them regularly is also important. And the third is the ability to maneuver a little bit around those partnerships and take pivots wherever necessary, right? So we don't the ideal approach would be that this is where we started off, but if over time we feel that because of change in circumstances and all, or because someone is better at doing certain things, if there is a need to say that we will change the way the program is a little bit, I think that is also very important, because that realization takes a little time, because you're so sold on to your dream project, saying nahi humko yahi karna hai. Go beyond that and say, okay, this is not working, but let's try something else and do that together and make things work. Because the ultimate thing for us, and as a foundation that we're focused on, is the number of lives impacted. So I think that is like a holy grail for us.
True.
Great. So keeping that destination in mind and maneuvering flexibility, deepening relationships, equitability through the partnerships, all very, very nice points to see what might we do going forward. We're a little short of time, and therefore we requested the audience could keep posting questions and the panelists could answer them on the chat itself while we move on to the next really interesting discussion on the aspirational districts and what can we do there. And with that, I hand over to Krishna, my colleague, to bring in the panelists and talk about that.
Thank you, Aarti. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, panelists. Really lovely
Thank you,
interaction.
Thank you so much, Aarti.
Thank you, everyone. Again, wonderful to hear all the views from different people, and I think it made a lot of sense on collaboration. Some interesting points that I noted. We move on to the next panel now. We have some very interesting discussion lined up with these organizations and foundations that have been working in the aspirational districts for the last many years. So I welcome Kiran, Rema, Anirban, and Saurav for the discussion. We've seen from the data that the aspirational district funding has grown almost 6 times in the last 3 years. But that's still, literally 2% of what the state gets, from a funding perspective, which is relatively low. And there are 7 states which got literally no money in the aspirational districts. And even in the entire, Rakesh Ranjanji mentioned that, 3,500 crores of, the CPSCs, which potentially, 60% of that can be prioritized for aspirational districts, which is, let's say, even 2,000 crores. What we see today is still, about, less than 15% of that, which means there's still a very big gap, in potential funding. We've also heard stories of that it's been, harder to kind of spend money in these areas. It's not places where you have grade A implementation organizations, infrastructure, because you also need that base infrastructure, partnerships, and all of these things to be there to be able to actually go in and execute. So what we have here are a set of people who've kind of overcome some of these challenges and really started to go on the ground and hopefully can show us some, the successes that they've had, and also some of the learnings and barriers that we should keep in mind. So I'll probably can start off with you. If you can, share with us what ONGC has been doing in aspirational districts, and any key learning there, and especially if you can share one or two success stories, Kiran, that will be very, very interesting. And if you could also highlight, beyond just financial resources, are there other assets that as a corporate you've been able to kind of leverage, in these geographies? Given this paucity of time, we'll probably have about 3 to 4 minutes for each of the speakers to share their views in the beginning, and then we'll come back for more questions. So Kiran, over to you.
Yeah, well, good evening, and it was interesting listening to all the practitioners in the field. ONGC, we have been given 20 aspirational districts to work with, and 10 of them are fall in our operation area, and 10 doesn't fall in our operation area. So when we look at the figures, we see a quick that operational area we are able to spend more money, and non-operational area we are unable to spend more money as such. So this itself is an indication that unless we are able to work with ground organizations, and we also have our own people there, it's not going to be effective. Because today, if you really look at it, the way things are happening is it's more a tick box approach, and a lot of times we get proposals from the district administration, and then we try to fund them. So mere checkbook writing organization, we need to look and move towards going on transformation mode. And wherever we have done these kind of direct involvement and engaging with ground level NGOs, we have been pretty successful. For example, in Visakhapatnam, the Araku Valley, we started working with Peace Foundation, and then we started looking at smokeless julas that they were doing with the clay and few things, and the women were trained to go to different villages and create these kind of kitchens. So this kind of, we work with about 600 households in about 40 villages, which today has given a lot of improvement in their own health as well as hygiene part of it. So this was possible because we had our fellow who was stationed in Arab. He was working directly. He went and understood what was the problem, identified a agency which were already doing something like this, and then started working with them. So this project is, I would say, one of the best projects that has happened in the last few months. I will also give you a similar example of where we got a requirement to build toilets and drinking water facility in the schools, government schools. And we have cleared that project and given the first milestone funds. But till today, there is a confusion in which schools to do. The blocks are getting redefined. The schools are getting redefined. So this is another example where we know that the fund is available. The fund is with the district administration. But the way things have to move is not happening because there is nobody at the ground who is doing this whole thing. So it's more of a pray and spray kind of an approach that's been happening there. So these are some of these challenges which definitely are making us also to reflect that that we need to work more with ground level organizations, and to do that we have to move from paper to people, and we need to look at more from funding to transformation. So I think with this I will end now, and if there is something we can do.
Absolutely. Kiran, thank you so much for that. So the two very key things that I picked up is, think about transformation and not just a project. And two, to be in the ground, without being there, and the investment of Araku Valley of, your team actually being there was what was, extremely critical. Rema, if, coming to you now, 4 aspirational districts that NSA has been working with, what would you say, has been the key learning? And also, have you found any of those, levers that you can now put your finger on and say, I can scale this up, or this is good news?
Yeah. So hi, Krishna, and thank you so much for having me on this show. It's been a wonderful evening with friends and a lot of people and great learning. Thank you. So NSC has got that unique, I could say, distinction of being based in Mumbai, but consciously deciding to take up work where we really felt there was a need. So some of our flagship programs like the Ashram Shala, the KGBV, which are all residential schools. And I'm sure everyone is aware where these schools are situated and to whom they really cater to, right? If you go to a tribal Ashram Shala, one has to really trudge into forest to get into that place. And not many corporates seem interested to go, but and naturally, because the amount of investment, the amount of management that is really required to probably do a WASH program or to do an educational intervention in these schools is mind-boggling, and we've experienced it. So from that stage, so starting from 2014, so we are a recent entrant, starting from 2014, going up to 2019, we've really managed to sort of mature our projects and take it to a larger level. We started off with backward districts. We were in some 100-odd districts. And then we are focusing more on the aspirational districts and out of the 4, actually, we have one which is which is actually a backward district because they didn't sign up for the aspirational district program. But we did not change our focus. We said, doesn't matter, we'll remain because there is a need. So the bottom line is we've gone where the need is. We've tried to really go where other players, forget about other corporate players, there are no NGOs there. In 2 of the district, in I think all the 4 the main districts that we are, there are 2 things. One, we had to capacity build NGOs, and we had to move them from other places into aspirational districts and entrench them and settle them down there. So that was a huge amount of work. The second, we realized the NGOs need to start talking to each other. They need to start collaborating. And we also learned that it's very important to go with the district administration, as Rakesh ji said, I had mentioned. And also, not only that, we have to get the people in these villages, in these blocks, in these districts invested in the program that we are doing for them. That's the only way. So the collaborations and convergence that happen at various levels. Happens at the district level, administration level. It happens at the NGO organizational level. It happens between us and other organizations, could be developmental organization, other corporate foundations who are already running their programs, and it must happen at the village level. One of the lovely examples that I love to share with people is this in Nandurbar, where once randomly we just gone for a meeting with the district collector. So while talking, I said, you know what, we want to work with you. Is there something that you can't do that we can help you with? And that started off a process of conversation, and we helped them with a very small bridge funding, and we were able to supply water to more than 10 or 12,000 villages. Phenomenal. We're talking about some 10 to 13,000 people. And that was something very phenomenal, and that really showed the power of working with the administration and really collaborating with. There were 4 different organizations that came together on that, in that project. Another one, if I may just take a minute, is a very recent one. It was so beautiful that I want to share it. Again, it's working with the district administration, and COVID, by the way, I know it's very unfortunate. It made us reinvent ourselves. It made us rethink, relook, reimagine. You can use all the re's in the world for COVID. But we've taken it as a challenge and really pushed our organizations to reinventing how do they go into communities. You see, our model is such that we have a huge number of foot soldiers. In fact, I think in every district, we have close to 1,000 foot soldiers on ground across all our, all the verticals. So it's really reimagining how do you go into the communities and, work. So the education NGO that we're working with in Ramanathapuram, they were thinking, how do we reach out to students? Because again, you're seeing this dichotomy. You're seeing one group having 8-hour sessions, and you'll agree with me, Krishna, you're from Bangalore. and 8-hour internet. They're on all sorts of things, saying that, oh, we have dance class to music class to school is on the on the web. And on the other hand, we've seen children who are totally out of the learning groove. So this NGO has actually done a beautiful app-based, webinar-based thing, which we got the district collector to to inaugurate, and his son actually inaugurated that. That was so beautiful. The child answered questions. They were so. It's when we really invest the time in the relationships, as our earlier panelists had said, then people get invested, people get involved and integrated.
Fantastic. Emma, thank you so much for that. And one of the most important things that I just picked up from what you said is that the key asset that NSC has been able to bring, which I feel a lot of the people here have been able to bring, that you highlighted, is the collaboration part, bringing various pieces together, the DC together, the other NGOs together, moving NGOs from different locations, convincing them to work in aspirational districts, providing that resource. And to do that, you need to have a little bit of a long-term commitment to that place. You can't be moving, around. Since you have decided to be there, you're able to kind of invest in bringing, some of these pieces, together. So thanks so much for that. We'll come back for more questions. Saurav, over to you. I want to come to Anirban in the end, because he's a little more of a Sutradhar orchestrator of various people and get his opinion. But Saurav, before I go to Anirban, what has been your experience in aspirational districts, and specifically, the deep work that you all do at Tata Steel? What key learnings are there, and what has been the key levers that you think can bring about more disruptional change in AD?
So thanks Krishna. Am I audible?
Very much, sir.
Perfect. So Krishna, thank you to you and the other organizers for having us on the panel today. I think it's been a fascinating discussion, the previous one, and lovely to be with my co-panelist here today. So just to begin with, the Tata Steel Foundation, I think we work in about a little less than 6,000 gram panchayats across Jharkhand, Odisha, parts of Chhattisgarh, and a little in the northeastern part of the country. And significant amount of our work by virtue of our locations and by natural selection has always fallen in aspirational districts, or districts where the need exists. Of course, they've been called aspirational districts for the last few years. So that's where we are. And just for a little bit of context, I think as an organization, we are an interesting mix, because all our work, all the resources that we put in, about 20% to 25% of the resources are through partner organizations. Almost 80 to 85% of our resources are put in through our own teams. I have a team of about 850 odd people who are working on the ground at any given time. And interestingly, another additional 30-35% of whatever resources we put in are actually leveraged through partnerships. We are actually the implementing partners for some other corporates, government partners, etc. So the reason I'm saying this is because while we are speaking about collaboration, I think as an organization, I think the last two models where we implement directly, and where we are actually implementing partners, or as some of the other colleagues said, the NGO, if you will, we find it remarkably useful to find us to keep us accountable and keep us on our toes, in terms of otherwise, so that's one. In terms of, as you said, I think how we run our businesses, how we look at our work, instead of maybe specific programs, just look at it in three parts. So we, in most of the areas where we work, we have now about 114-year-old relationship with most of the communities, right, where we work in. So that comes with its own legacies, that comes with its own, with that kind of time period shared. It's not shared history, now it's shared context, so generations have been together. So the first is a philosophical alignment. What I mean by that is two things. One is where we are working with indigenous populations or tribal populations or excluded communities, make sure there's a very organic understanding and a constant space where there is feedback that is coming in. and the engagement is not at our choice or at our convenience. The engagement is by the choice of communities and at the convenience of communities. That's one. And second, I think an understanding which I think some of other colleagues were also alluding to is that we obsess about data, we obsess about information, but data and information defines the problem. In our space, data and information can only partially define the solution. So be conscious of the fact that magic happens when you deal with the maybe, and then occasionally. So have that consciousness. That's something that we embed in our work. How we operate, I think the one distinguishing part is the way we look at our own talent. I mean, large parts of our talent are indistinguishable from communities. So we obsessively recruit locally, build capacity locally, and most of our engagement on the ground is actually through programs which are less akin to salaried employment, but more akin to fellowships, where the contract is not merely financial. The contract is in terms of what value do you add to individuals who work with you. So we found that to work beautifully. I mean, even in the current COVID times where our movements are restricted, but work is not necessarily getting hampered, because there's a spirit, and B, there's connectivity, the practical piece of it. Absolutely. The other piece we find very, very useful now is, our business managers. Our business managers to share the same spirit with which we do our development work. So we run deep immersion programs. All the senior leadership of all our mining assets, have undergone a minimum of a fortnight in the last 3 or 4 years of just immersive trainings, simplified management concepts. Life doesn't need to be so, problematic and, complicated all the time. So there's an organic understanding, and that's very essential where you have business assets that are operating in these pieces. And just in terms of what we do, any core challenge that we are trying to solve, I think we actually get into mission mode only when we are reasonably sure that there's actually a minimum of 5 years to a decade kind of requirement. So if you see our top 6 or 7 investments or programs that we do, all of them we've been at it for at least 6 or 7 years now, if not more. And the newer ones, we know that we are in it for 10 years. So we go in only when we are reasonably sure that our commitment will not waver, right? And also interestingly, I mean, for a company, since the question is on business and this thing, not so much on the foundation, I think the company, we place what we do with our community is right at the center of the overall strategic objectives, and subject in the same rigor, review, everything that a revenue, cost, technology, R&D, digital agenda would get, our societal agenda gets exactly the same amount of airtime, exactly the same amount of rigor, and exactly the same amount of capacity building, even at the board level. So if my board raises their hand and says that, I don't understand this science, they will also raise their hand and say, I don't understand rights-based movement. Can someone please come and tell me? Fantastic. So those are things that we grapple with. So just wanted to leave that with you.
Thanks so much, sir. I really appreciate that. I have more questions for you, but I know Anirban has a bit of a paucity of time. So Anirban, over to you. As somebody who's looking to orchestrate this, you've seen many corporates, you've worked across various districts. What would be your key learnings, and what advice would you have for corporate foundations wanting to work in aspirational districts?
Thanks, Krishna. So when we started, Transform Rural India Foundation, so it started like a CSO platform. I think Hari in his opening remarks were talking about, and a couple of other panelists also talked about that the NGOs itself need to talk to each other, and there needs to be concerted effort among the NGOs. So TRI was kind of born on that idea, and we have about 21 of the largest NGOs who are kind of strategic partners across different geographies. Now, when we got into the Aspirational District program in 2018, where we have a formal partnership with the Ministry of Home Affairs, which is the coordinating agency for 35 LWE aspirational districts. So among a variety of other challenges which were there, Rakesh ji talked about it, that the whole program got launched with the Prime Minister talking to the district magistrates, but it did not have a, an implementation structure on the ground. It did not have clear guidelines to begin with. So several of these things actually were created while we were implementing the program. So we have, in all these 35 districts, we have something called a TADP cell, a Transforming Aspirational Districts cell, where we have placed in two capable professional staff at each of these 35 districts. Plus there are state level cells, and there is a national level cell which is embedded within the Ministry of Home Affairs. So when we were looking at the engagement with the letter which was being referred to earlier, which had gone to the PSUs to support the aspiration districts, so we identified that there were 38 different PSUs allocated to us for the 35 districts. And actually there were 3 districts which had no PSU which were allocated. So we looked out to, IRCTC and a couple of other people who to support those 3 districts. Now the biggest challenge, which many of the panelists have been talking, that the smart collector would come in with 5 proposals. The poorest district with the maximum need will the collector there will be dealing with so many problems that this is his list of the problems. So what we did was, and when we started talking to collectors, we realized that it's just beyond his or her bandwidth to deal with creating new projects which are intensive, and it goes through multiple rounds of engagement. So what we did is we created about 8 to 10 different focus templates on the focus dimensions of health and nutrition and education, innovative projects which were locally contextual, which our team members, the TADP fellows who were there, would discuss with the collector and identify that out of these 10 different options, which are the ones we would like to pick up for this district. And once they have agreed, the templates are already created. They are only the facts and figures related to the district has to be, put into that template. So very quickly, we were able to put in about 460 odd crores worth of proposals were put into for requests which were given to different PSUs, the 38 plus the 2, actually 40 PSUs. Then the Ministry of Home Affairs played a crucial role. So this is what we did on the grassroots to identify proper projects and putting it into the rigor which is required for the funding which needs to come. The second part was at the Ministry of Home Affairs, there were 2 rounds of engagement, one held by the Joint Secretary and later the Secretary Border Management, who is in charge of the of this whole program. He called in 52 leaders from the PSUs in the Ministry of Home Affairs. We had a meeting there, and actually 192 crores got released just after that meeting. So there were so many questions which are happening. So total in 2019-20, we were able to mobilize 356 crores out of the 460 odd crores worth of proposals which were generated. And to track all this, there is now, we have an online digital tracking system which looks at all that. And obviously the other questions which I think Mr. Ranjan raised in the beginning, that many of these PSU CSR is coming to give hardware. The problem is that there is already oversupply of money on that. We have normal projects, we have in the LWE, we have a special central assistance of 33 crores, which are all focused on hardware. Whereas what is required is, how do we work with CSOs there? How do we work, provide training capacity building money? How do we provide manpower cost for the competent CSOs which we have built up in each of these districts? So those were challenges with several organizations. We faced that challenges and we have still not resolved it for most. There are only few organizations like RIMA who has engaged, and we have been in contact with, although the districts don't match, but we have been in contact, and more serious engagement of that kind is required with a long-term perspective. So So one of the things which I would say to take forward, and I think it has been talked about in bits and pieces, that there needs to be some kind of a EFBX or an exchange where, say Gates Foundation, Sattva, maybe the Tata Trust come together and they accredit certain type of projects which are impactful, which are necessary, and the CSR then can put in the money with and that kind of a special vehicle would have a team of people, people from like your organization, Sattva, or the PWCs of the world, who can come together, who can give assurance that whatever is committed will actually be delivered. And then we have partnerships of, good quality, say, civil society organizations on the ground, quality engagement with the DM in the aspirational district. So we have to create some kind of a, an intermediary special service, space. It could be within a ministry, it could be outside a ministry, but this is a discourse which we need to take. And I don't know whether Mr. Ranjan is still on the call. This is something maybe the Niti Aayog can think about. So with that, I will, stop at this.
Thanks so much, Anirban. And I think the last point that you made, first of all, it was fascinating to hear how that one meeting where you're able to actually fill in the gaps. If you actually fill in the gaps, you are able to kind of let the money flow, and then also into the right places, and build a tracking mechanism around it. And then creating, I think we need a lot more capacity building structure. It looks like across the board. It's not just at the corporate level, but at the execution level, at the, at the DC support level, all of those things, so that it doesn't happen in silos, but happens.
And I didn't talk about what goes once the money is sanctioned, because then the L1s come into the picture, then the special account and the tracking of that money. It's another story. We'll save it for another day.
But thank you so much, Anirban. And I know you've overstayed, though you had another commitment. Thank you for that. We are quite, out of time, but just one going back to Saurav, because Saurav, you also made a very important point of the way the corporate reviews, makes a big difference, because that's a huge asset you brought to the table as well, as a corporate sector. And also going into a little more of a mission mode, So I think that was an important point that I wanted to reflect on, as well. Just one quick, round with all the four of you, just one line, if you, given the paucity of time, one line wish that you, have, and from whoever you have, it's a wish from a Niti Aayog, a corporate partner, an NGO partner, whoever it is, what would be that wish? If you had that magic wand, what would you wish for?
Yeah. So my wish would be step out of Maharashtra and come to the poorer geographies of the country.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Anirban. Saurabh?
My wish would be for Anirban's wish to come true.
So just get out of Maharashtra and Karnataka and those kind of geographies, which today get significantly high, CSR share of the resources.
No, and I think, if I could just slip in a second one and be a little greedy, I also think, it's time for us to reflect on, when we speak of collaborations, how within our own organizations, even as foundations, how communities are allowed to take some of the hard decisions, and not just, are engaged at our convenience. I think that's something that significantly needs to change. Otherwise, this whole rights discourse is not going anywhere.
Fully agree. Rema?
Yeah, so I would wish that there could be an easy way of partnering with all the corporates who are doing the infrastructure, funding and all that, so that we can do the behavioral change and other things. So that would mean a huge efficiency in terms of resources.
Brilliant.
And yes, if I could just be a little greedy, since the men have gone that way before, it's really that I think it's a very, very exciting time. There are so many things happening and will happen in this entire social space, developmental space, and we all should be very proud that we're all actors at this particular point of time, and really heroes and heroines in our own way. And so I think this entire thing of really collaborating and converging is serious, because the amount of funds we have is not much. If you see it in the whole context, and India is such a complex country, And I really sympathize with the government officers whenever I go to their offices and see the voluminous work that they do. So really, we have to collaborate. And my wish is that whether not Sattva or other consultants, we can all come together to really do this matchmaking. I know that's happening in various stages, but I hope it will just happen faster.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rama. Kiran, we started with you. We're coming back to you towards the end. What would be your wish to whom?
I think my wish would be to enable community-based organizations' growth and see how the assets we are developing will be owned by them, so that once we move out, they still take over it and run it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. Really wonderful panel. I mean, it's fantastic to hear all the views, such good points. Wish we could have gone on for a very long time, much more than this. But given the paucity of time, we will close this panel now. And I'd like to hand over. Thank you all again, and I'd like to hand over to my colleague Aarti for her closing remarks.
Thank you, Krishna. And it's been a fascinating 2 hours, and we've had the opportunity to also put this together on YouTube to be able to view later. So many interesting insights around how partnerships got built and particularly got cemented and strengthened during COVID. What kind of resources were able to be and assets were able to be brought into it. A lot more wisdom around how do we work better and how do we collaborate better for the aspirational districts. So this is really just the start of it. We see this as step one. We've now got a lot of evidence and quite a bit of documentation on how domestic foundations have been working through their strategies, their partnerships. We've got a wealth of information from the launch and discussions today, and really looking forward to see how do we take this from here to the wish list being talked about today, to the points that Rakesh Anjanji mentioned about saying, how do we get more accredited projects and collaboration with the blessings of the district administration functioning well in the district? How do we look at more impactful partnerships and be able to have those projects in the more far-flung areas? How do we really bring in equity, equality, and many of these inclusive design and execution principles into the work we do? So we take this as the starting point. We will be in touch with all of you as we take a lot of these recommendations to the next steps. And please join us if and that's also our big submission. We really look forward to more support as we take forward a lot of the actionable recommendations that came today through action. My gratitude and thanks are to BMGF for supporting us through the entire study and today's launch, to Niti Aayog, and to all of our eminent panelists for having joined us today, and to Srimati Rajshri Birla for sending us the note. Thank you so much. It's been with great involvement of so many different domestic foundations that we've been able to put this together. So looking forward to take this ahead. Thank you, and have a great evening.
Thank you. Thanks, Aarti.